Firstly, when you're chasing a big goal and then you achieve it, you immediately forget about what you've just achieved and you immediately set yourself a new, bigger goal. So it's not as satisfying. For me, it was a lot more personal. I think you know this, but I come from a background of over 10 years of drug addiction. And people often ask me, what was your biggest achievement? What's your biggest accolade? What are the things you're most proud of? I'm not proud of any of my world records. What I'm proud of is that every single world record I set me further away from the person that I once was. Because it gave me, exactly like I said now, that next thing to chase. And that's what it was for me personally.
Hey everyone, on the show with me today is strength coach, educator, owner at the OTG method, Lil Bianchi. Lil has a remarkable story to share, one of addiction in her 20s that ultimately led to transitioning into powerlifting, where she became a 19-time world record holder. Lil then furthered her career into the coaching world, where she became a very successful strength and conditioning coach and transitioned further from a brick-and-mortar business to the online space, and has done so with aplomb and with incredible amounts of success so far. And in this episode, we delve deep into that transition, as well as other topics such as the online fitness space and how to spot the influences from the educators, performance-enhancing drugs, as well as her most recent transition into motherhood. I love this episode, and I think it's got a lot of really good nuggets if you're looking to take your health and your wellness seriously. And Lil has walked the walk. She has made the transition into leading an incredibly healthy life from what was a very dark space, and therefore has set an example for us all to follow suit. Please check Lil out on all her social media handles and website, which is attached in the show notes below. And if you found this episode useful, please share it. A lot of work goes into the podcast on a weekly basis to bring you free content and share stories that you can hopefully apply in improving your life. And it really helps if you share it. And just in case you forget, I'm going to remind you again at the end of the episode. Lil Bianchi, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, so you are the second strength and conditioning specialist I've had on the show.
Wow.
First one was episode 7, I think, was Garth Milne. He's a golf strength and conditioning.
Okay.
But it's nice to talk a bit of shop. I have a wide variety of guests. I really look forward to our discussion today. For the context for the listeners, can you give me a little bit of background, how you find yourself where you are today?
Right, so strength and conditioning coach. I work mostly with elite athletes and high-performing athletes in strength sports, mostly strength sports and MMA. I've been in the industry for almost 17 years now.
Is it?
Yeah, based in Durban, do come from an in-person background. I had a strength and performance facility in Umhlanga for 7 years, and I've been online ever since.
Okay. And your transition from a brick-and-mortar gym to exclusively online, what prompted that decision?
Sure, that was a challenge in itself. I mean, like I said, I had the facility for 7 years. Working in person and working online with an athlete's a very different story. But we had a Black Swan event, COVID in 2020, and I sort of just made a decision on the 26th of March, got home from work after having to lock up the gym, and I thought, I've got to wait the government has got to dictate to me how I can earn an income. At that stage, I'd been working, obviously, I was a high-level elite athlete, and I'd been working with my coach, who was based in Australia, Sebastian Oreb. I don't know if you've heard of him. He goes by the Australian strength coach. He took me to 5 world championships, which I won. I broke 19 world records under his guidance. He's got athletes all over the world. He trains Thor Bjornsson.
And powerlifting.
So Thor Bjornsson's a strongman,
Yes.
from Game of Thrones.
Yes,
but yes.
Your world records were powerlifting.
My world records were powerlifting.
Gotcha.
And not in one occasion in the 7 years that we worked together did we ever talk on the phone. Did we ever have an online session where it's a live session? Everything was about communication and how he communicated to me. And I admired that this man had achieved so much out of his small gym in Sydney. He's coaching these athletes around the world. So that night, getting home after closing my gym, I looked at Sebastian and I thought, I need to take a page out of his book. How did he do this? I've always wanted to get into the online world just as like a side hustle with a business. cracked open a bottle of wine, sat there, and like I said, wasn't going to wait for the government to dictate when I can earn an income. I also knew that I didn't have the expertise to run an online business. What did I know about the digital space? Got no real marketing experience, advertising experience, completely out of my realm. So I reached out to some business coaches in the US, and I invested quite a large sum of money into getting them to assist me with the transition. I wasn't just going to go about it by, setting up on social media and getting my name out there. I needed to know about the ins and outs. Like I said, it was a large investment. Within 3 months, I'd made that investment back. By the time we'd reopened the gyms in August that year, I tripled my income. I was earning dollars, and it just changed the game for me. And I had that decision to make whether I should reopen my facility. And I thought, as much as I love working in person, I've done a lot of groundwork doing it. I've now learned the skill of communication. I've mastered the art of coaching and assessing an athlete online within my industry, just with my experience with Sebastian and a lot of other things I did in between. And I took a run for it, and it was definitely the best decision I ever made. I mean, yes, on a day-to-day basis, I will run into people in the streets who'll say to me, we miss OTG. People miss the community. People miss the space. It's that. But professionally, I'm now able to help athletes around the world. And I think it's changed the world so much, because previously, whatever your sport was, you were limited to your area code. You want to get better at your skill, get stronger, get more powerful. You're limited to the coaches in your area code. And you may be in a small town, or you may not have access to great coaches. We now are positioned that we can reach out to the people we really want to work with, which is what I did with Sebastian Oreb. I mean, he changed my life completely, like I said. And I wanted to be able to offer my skill set to people around the world. And obviously these business coaches that I reached out to really helped me excel in that area. And the rest is history. I've been here 5 years now. Best decision I ever made.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, I now also own my time, which is a big thing. I think a lot of people, when they define success, ask someone how you define success. And the truth is, success is having freedom of time.
Yeah.
You can have I know some of the most wealthy and successful businessmen, but they're working 15, 16-hour days. And that, for me, is not successful in any sense. Especially now, a new mom, I get to be at home every day with my child. I get to go on holidays whenever I choose. Yes, we're working constantly, but that for me was what I really was chasing.
Yeah. 2 things there. So, yes, evaluating success, defining it is probably the most important thing for anybody who's wanting to improve in anything. Yes, be successful. Okay, cool.
What does that mean?
What does it mean? I want to be rich. I want to whatever. But if you say yes to something, you're always automatically saying no to something else, right? So if I want to be wealthy, super, super wealthy, then that means probably not going to have the best relationship with my kids.
Yeah.
Or with my wife, or with my husband, or I'm not going to have many friends.
Let's take Elon Musk as a perfect example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're saying yes to one thing, no to something else. Are you prepared to sacrifice what's in the no for what you're pursuing, what's the yes? And so, yes, assessing and defining what it means to be successful. And that could mean different things. So owning your time, for example, I'm still selling my time, but I've scaled it in a sense that I've gone from one-on-ones to now semi-private. So to get the same amount of income that I was getting, I can now achieve that in a much shorter space of time. So then my even though, let's say if the income stays the same, in absolute terms, my rate per hour has increased by 2 or 3-fold. So if you're using time as your metric, then I've improved my salary by 3 times, 300% or whatever. So I get that. That's fantastic. Number 2, the thing that I noticed there, you spoke about the art of communication and how you had to develop that skill so much so to be able to get the results out of your athletes. How did your communication improve as you transitioned from one-on-one or in brick-and-mortar in front of the person to then online?
I think what's the important thing to know about being in an online space and being in a bricks-and-mortar business is, in bricks-and-mortar, you are better able to build relationships with people. They walk through the door, and it's easy to build their trust. In an online space, it's very difficult to build someone's trust. So that took a lot of lessons, and that's why I said that I made that investment, because those weren't just skills that I had, they're skills that I needed to learn how to develop. And that was the game changer for me, really learning how to be on a social platform and make a sale or market myself or advertise myself through building trust. And that was the biggest game changer for me, is learning how to do that. And that's not an easy thing to do. It may sound like something that, just build trust through. It's not. There's a lot of tactics you've got to learn. You've got to also, when you're not dealing with someone face to face, there's no body language, there's no expression, and those things are really difficult. So when I say learning to communicate, it's not having a conversation like I am here. It's learning how to communicate over text, or using the right words, or speaking to someone in a more conscious way that, everybody you communicate to differently. I have a powerlifter, I have an MMA fighter, I have a boxer. You've got to, before we went live, we were talking about communicating into what their mental space is. That's what we were saying,
yes.
Understanding what someone's life is like outside of their sport.
Yeah.
And that it's building relationships and understanding that these are not just athletes, these are people with family, with children, with businesses, with professional careers, and understanding that whole realm in order to tap into their potential in their sport.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of psychology.
I can imagine, because it's behavioral modification,
Yes.
right? Somebody is doing X and they've come to you because they want to achieve Y, but they aren't able to bridge the gap because their behaviors don't allow for them to achieve Y yet. So you're coming in, you're saying, okay, this is what we need to do, X, Y, and Z. But you have to understand why a person wants to make the change, firstly, because that's when the changes will happen, because you'll be like, hey, pal, remember you came to me because you had this problem, like this thing hasn't 100%. Gone away. I had a client yesterday, came in for an assessment and did the whole thing, like the questionnaire, the medical history, blah-de-blah, did the assessment, and he was like, funnily enough, he came from a powerlifting background.
Oh, wow.
Just like, not competitively, just...
that sort of training background.
Yeah. And he's now a golfer, and he's playing golf 3 times a week, and he really wants to improve his golf fitness and so on. And he comes from a background of addiction. He comes from a background of trauma. And I said to him, okay, so why now? Like, you've trained before, you've been in the gym before, you know what it's like to train regularly. Why? You could have not phoned. You could have phoned in 2 months' time.
Yeah.
And he said, because I woke up this morning and my daughter asked me, Dad, why are you so grumpy all the time?
I actually got goosies, because that's such a powerful question.
And I was like, there.
Yeah.
That's why you're here. Like, forget about the flexibility, forget about the lower back pain. That's why you're here. So I'm going to remind you of that when you start to get a little bit late for your training. You have to speak to
people's pain.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, got you. Now we know how to move forward. Tell me qualifications. You mentioned that you did the extra studies to benefit yourself in terms of social media. What is your background then in terms of strength and conditioning, apart from you obviously being a world record holder in powerlifting? Is this knowledge you've acquired through experience, or is this studies that you've done in addition to your experience?
So I'm quite the academic in the sense that I've literally spent my entire career studying. When I finished, when I started in the industry, I went and got a sports science degree. I then went and specialized through the ISSA and did strength and conditioning. And when I'm sitting there with all these qualifications, I thought, well, I actually don't have, I have the mental tools, but I don't have the physical tools to go out and approach a client and convince them that I'm good enough to work with them. So back then, without getting into too much detail, I'm in the powerlifting world. I'm an athlete. I've now got all the certifications and all that shit behind me. I wanted to start working with powerlifters. Now, I didn't want to do what most people in my industry do today. I could maybe take some flack for that, but it is what it is. You break one world record, you win one SA champs, and now suddenly you're a coach. I didn't want that. I wanted to be confident in my skills. So I reached out to, the first guy I reached out to was Brian Carroll. Now, Brian Carroll's the first man to ever squat 500 kilos in a suit. He's a world-renowned powerlifting coach, but he works in equipped powerlifting, which is where powerlifting originally started. So I thought, well, that's where I need to start. I reached out to him on Instagram, and he replied. And we built a relationship. I've got podcasts with him. We've worked closely. And I wanted to work and understand what he understood about powerlifters. So I reached out to Brian Carroll. That's when I reached out to Sebastian Arab. And then just in little things that I did. So I started competing just very casually in Girovoy sports, which is the Russian sport of kettlebell lifting. Okay. I then got hold of Steve Cotter and Mike Marler and the specialists in those fields, and I wanted to work with those coaches and learn from them So aside from all the certifications that I said I'm constantly studying and doing, that's where I felt the most important thing was, because like I said, do you have a sports science degree? Who fucking cares? Nobody asks you. Not one of my athletes has asked me what certifications I have. They want to know who you've worked with and how successful that athlete's become.
Yeah,
and
your athletes are your marketing.
Exactly, that's your CV. So the paperwork, for me, the reason I'm continuously studying, and now I'm studying more things like biomechanics and the anatomy and those sorts of things, it really doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. You know, it does, don't get me wrong, it's good to have that background, but at the same time, it's about experience and knowledge and what you've done for people. And that's also the problem with social media today. You know, people listen to what's being said and not who's saying it.
Yeah. I think with education, it's
vital.
It's
I'm
vital.
not saying it's not.
It's vital because it gives you at least the credibility to start.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what it's good for. Then after that, then you're on your own.
Yeah.
Then it's time in the arena, ongoing research.
I think the problem in South Africa, unfortunately, sorry to interrupt you, is that there's no governing body. So it's not like in the US or in Europe where you've got to be affiliated to a certain governing body in order to be a personal trainer. Here, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can do it, which is what is a disadvantage for us professionals who've spent years in the gutter learning skill, studying. It makes it really difficult for us.
It's an interesting one because you've also there's a lot of overlap between like strength and conditioning and then biokinetics.
Yes.
So like biokinetics is recognized in South Africa. It's not recognized anywhere else on the globe. There it's like physical therapists.
Yes.
But there's a lot of overlap between like your fundamental entry-level exercises and with S&C and then what a bio could do.
Yeah.
And that is also becomes tricky waters to navigate because if somebody is post-op, for example, then go and see a bio. That's what they're trained to do, to rehabilitate you, to strengthen the areas so that you don't, so you can return to your sport.
Yeah.
But then, as far as I can understand, that's when the role ends. You know, then you have to go into the performance side of it.
Yes.
Then you go and see a strength and conditioning specialist, for example. But there seems to be quite a lot of overlap. But I'm going to park that to one side because I want to get to influencers and being in the fitness space. One of my pet peeves is similar to those types of people that you're talking about, like the guys who they flash in the pan, they're really good at branding and marketing.
Yes.
And not so good at the training side of things. And in an online world, it becomes so difficult to navigate where your metric as a consumer of, let's use Instagram as an example, your metric for whether or not somebody is good at their job is dependent on how many followers they have.
Yeah.
And there are loads of really good strength and conditioning coaches that don't have any followers on Instagram.
Yeah. Unheard of. A lot of them aren't even on social media.
Exactly, because they're in the trenches training people. And then you get the people on the other side of it who might have 300,000, 400,000 followers. Click on this link and get fucking high protein waffle recipe and like some crap. And people buy into it because these people are really good at branding and marketing. And funnily enough, like you said, getting the trust.
Yes.
But there isn't the knowledge on the back end.
Yeah.
But I'm not really in that space. I'm more on the ground. You are more in that space. So what do you find?
There's what I like to communicate, what I try to communicate is to educate people, and not just educate people in the work that I'm doing, but educate people where and how not to be naive with certain situations. You know, I'm not trying to, when I use social media to acquire business, it's not by making sales pitches, but it's rather by educating people on the facts so that they know what to look out for. And I won't blatantly say, be careful of social media influencers. I'd rather come from a standpoint of, talking about intent with certain movements where you won't hear those brand ambassadors speaking in that way. They talk about weight loss, they're selling their recipe books, but there's no results. Where are they advertising their results or what they've done for people? It's a lot of what they've done for themselves. And it may just be small scale. There may only be 1,000 people watching that story that I've posted on that day, but it's 1,000 more people that you've enlightened.
Yeah.
And I think that's for us who are serious educators in our fields, who work hard with people, who have the experience, the knowledge, and the background. I think that falls on our shoulders to educate people constantly on what to look out for. And I think it's not just in our industry. I think it's in many industries. You see business coaches popping up left, right, and center. You know, I can turn you into a multi-million-dollar business. Yeah, but can you?
Yeah.
You know, do you have a multi-million-dollar business? Who
Yeah.
else have you helped? You know, there's a lot of talk on social media. There's a lot of talk, but not a lot being done.
Not a lot of doing.
Not a lot of doing at all.
But then you get the people who are misleading.
Yes.
So an obvious example at the moment is Liver King. So you've got people that are constantly training with their shirts off, or then if you look at it with respect to like female influencers, they're wearing the crop tops and they've got the great bodies and they've got the whole story, and they're selling subliminally, okay, if you want to look like me, then this is what you need to do. You need to do my meal plan or my workout. And yet they aren't disclosing the fact that they're on some kind of additional help.
Yeah.
And for me, it's less about the fact that they're taking it, even though there's obvious risks to that, and it's their life.
Yeah.
They must do what they want. It's more about the fact that you're intentionally misleading people who aren't in the know.
Yes, and the Liver King is a perfect example of that.
That's what I have a problem with.
I don't want to discredit the amount of hard work that man has done. Also, on the same note, steroids aren't going to make you look like that. A lot of people believe that, let me hit some Anavar and up my test and I'm going to look like Liver King. No, that oak does train hard. I'm never going to take that away from him. Being a lot more jacked, a lot leaner, a lot more vascular, yes, that's going to be the difference. But because I work in the biggest sport I work in, which is strength sports, we're not drug tested. So steroids are rife in our sport. And the one thing that does frustrate me is that if there is a really strong athlete, someone will turn around and say, yeah, but they're on gear. Yes, they are on gear. But gear is going to give them 10 to 15%. This person has worked and slugged away for 10 years. So it's also, there's two ways of looking at those things. I 100% agree with what you're saying. I'm on the same page, especially when it comes from a sales point of view. And it's, the skinny Karen on Instagram who's selling her amazing body, but yes, she's been pumping the Anavar. But you've also got to look, not Karen. I mean, if we're talking athletes now,
Yes.
we've also got to look at the amount of work that they have actually put in and not take that away from them.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
It's a
tricky
fine
one.
line. It's a
because
fine line.
it's like Lance Armstrong with doping and cycling. Like at that stage during that era of cycling, everybody was doping.
I was going to say the 25 athletes after him also wouldn't have, also would have failed their test.
Yeah, exactly. So he took the fall for it, and I've sort of changed my opinion on that a little bit over the years, where I was quite harsh and critical of him at that time. But then as you realize, there's a good chance he would have been that great anyway if everybody was on a level playing field.
You still have to have the mental resilience. You've still got to put in the hard work,
Yeah, it's just when you try and monetize something.
Yes.
Then
100%. So this is coming from a coaching point of view
rather than
from
an athletic standpoint. So it's when it's the guy who is super jacked on the cover of Men's Health and it's do this 6-minute ab workout.
Yeah.
Meantime,
6 minutes ab workout.
Like he's like, I'm being facetious, but he's been training for 6 months prior to that photo shoot, and he's jacked up like you can't believe, and there's a bit of touching on Photoshop, and that's what's being sold. And I just feel like there are not enough authentic people who are talking real, who are saying, dude, for a guy who's 40 or 45, or a lady who's 40 or 45 and got 2 young kids and a 9-to-5 job, like, no, like you're setting them up for failure. You're selling them something that they aren't going to be able to achieve, because they just won't. There's just too many other things going on. And I think that there's too many people out there in the online space who aren't practicing enough empathy for the people that are actually consuming their content.
Yeah.
Like, these are people who, the fitness influencers are people who are, that is what they do. Like, their job is to look after themselves and make themselves look good, and keep, if they're good, then they keep up to date with modern research and wada. But sometimes I feel like they lose track of, okay, who are the people on the other end of the phone? People on the other end of the phone are probably somebody with 2 kids, 9-to-5 job, as I said. Sleep is not great at the best of times because of the 2 kids. They're constantly getting sick from school. They sit in traffic for an hour a day. Like, where do you expect this person to do the thing of the gym and the like the way that you're doing it, and then to get the results that you are also not being transparent about because you're doing other things as well? That's where I become a bit disillusioned. And I'm like,
it's so difficult. It must be so difficult for the grey man in the streets who is just scrolling Instagram.
Yeah.
And again, that's where, try and make or create as much awareness as you can. I mean, I work with majority athletes, but my business also deals with the general population. And I can't tell you how many young women I've had where, our nutritional coach will be assessing them and fill out the questionnaire, and they've got to fill in what supplements they're taking, creatine, whatever. And they'll put on there Anavar. And we'll say, do you know what this is? No, that's what my previous personal trainer recommended I take. It's a fat burner. Well, no. We see a lot of this, where a lot of young women, especially the younger girls, 22, 23 years old, they just trust the advice of their PT, or they trust the advice of someone on Instagram, and they don't actually know what they're dealing with. They don't do the research. They don't, and also the personal trainers who are advocating this or encouraging it aren't saying, well, if this is a route you want to take, let's do some blood work. Let's see if this is your choice, again, you do you. You want to eat cake, but let's just at least go about it the right way. Like I said, there's steroid use and there's steroid abuse, but most people, young people or young women nowadays, aren't even aware of what it is that they're taking.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad to see.
So what is the difference between steroid use and steroid abuse?
I think it's going, so firstly, making the decision to do it, having the right intent to do it, and then getting the advice from the right spaces, doing the background work. Do you actually need this, or are you just afraid of hard work? You've got to have those honest conversations. And I'll be honest, I'm in powerlifting. We're not tested. It's a very competitive world, although a very, very small sport. It's very competitive. And it was intimidating for me starting out because I knew that a lot of the women I was going up against were using steroids. So you can be very easily influenced. And I remember having the conversation with my coach and saying to him, right, like, what can I just dabble in? What can I just take to just give me that kick to help me recover a little bit faster, to, just help me be a little bit more competitive? And he said, well, Lil, we can do 100 things. But what I loved about his advice was that he said, right, if this is a road you want to take, we're going to have a serious conversation about it. Firstly, you need to look at how this is going to change you as a woman, especially as a woman. Men aren't really affected the same way women are when it comes to steroids. And he gave me a challenge. He said, right, if you hit, I compete at under 52 kilos. So for me to hit a 400 kilo total across 3 lifts is a really big feat of strength. He said, when you do that, then we can consider steroid use. And then we're going to go about it in these ways. And that 400 for me that's not a small achievement. That's years and years and years of training. When I hit that 400 and I knew that I could, and I'd put in the work without it, I wasn't interested anymore. I'd already broken how many world records and won how many world championships without it. And that was the biggest lesson I got from him, because yes, I had the choice to do it, but he said, let's at least get strong first. Most people coming into my world or into our sport, they're not interested in getting strong first. People are all about instant gratification, and that's the problem we have with social media. That's the problem we have with all these influencers. It's about instant gratification, and unfortunately, that's what people want. Yeah.
Your world championships and your world records, at that time when you were achieving these things and these unbelievable feats, how did that feel? Like, what was that feeling like? Was it as big a deal as you thought it was going to be? Did you feel more stoked than you thought you would be?
Firstly, when you're chasing a big goal and then you achieve it, you immediately forget about what you've just achieved, and you immediately set yourself a new, bigger goal. So it's not as satisfying. For me, it was a lot more personal. I think you know this, but I come from a background of over 10 years of drug addiction. And people often ask me, what was your biggest achievement? What's your biggest accolade? What are the things you're most proud of? I'm not proud of any of my world records. What I'm proud of is that every single world record I set me further away from the person that I once was. Because it gave me, exactly like I said now, that next thing to chase. And that's what it was for me personally. Yes, of course I enjoyed it. I loved the moment. Every achievement got me invitationals to bigger competitions. Those things, great, wonderful. But it really was about, because with a drug addiction, you're always in recovery. You never recovered.
Yeah.
And those things were constant reminders to me as to why I don't go back down that road. 3 years ago, I went through a divorce, which, people will say the two hardest things you do in your life are divorce and moving house. And it really is that. It's one of the most challenging things. It was the first time after so many years where I looked back at drugs and thought, this is going to make me feel a hell of a lot better right now.
Yeah.
And then I looked at everything I achieved. Now, is it really worth it? Like, look how far you've come. Look how far you've pushed yourself away from that previous Lil you were. And all it's going to take is one mistake, one bad day. And then again, it would be me giving power to that person who'd hurt me to take away everything that I did.
Yeah.
So that's what those world records felt like. That's what those world championships felt like, pushing me away from who I once was. And I think powerlifting as a whole, and I think why I've been so attracted to the sport and strength sports as a whole, and I'm not saying they're different from other sports with regards to dedication to the sport, but because they are so physically demanding, they tend to attract people who are accustomed to a struggle.
Yeah.
And I find that I've met a lot more people like me within powerlifting, and not just ex-addicts, but people who come from abusive backgrounds, or people who've really had to have mental strength to bypass things that have happened to them in their lives. And I think that's why I steered into this industry. And I remember when I first started specializing, so to speak, in powerlifting, South African turned around to me and said, you're a girl in a man's world. This is back in 2010. In powerlifting, it's in fetal stages in this country, and you want to make a career out of this? Laughed. And I think that was the biggest motivation. And I turned it around, and I turned it around very quickly. It's funny how things like that the smallest things, like you said to that client this morning, what his little girl said, that it's funny how those small things can motivate you.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's absolutely
powerful.
Crazy. Yeah, incredibly powerful.
What were you addicted to, Lil?
Cocaine.
Is it?
Yeah, which is also one of those things. It's much more of a mental addiction than a physical addiction. It's not heroin. It's not smoking cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes are a lot harder to kick than it is cocaine. But it's the mental addiction and who you become on it that has such a grip on you, because you become so, you think you become so incredibly powerful and knowledgeable, and it's breaking that.
Yeah. That's
hard to break.
I think when you look at those types of sports, like your powerlifting, your martial arts, really, really tough physical and as a result, mentally demanding sports, it's almost like the mental challenge of overcoming addiction is so difficult. And I'm speaking from the outside. I haven't had an addiction to any kind of drug. It's almost like the addiction to that, you need to be a certain type of person in terms of mental resilience to participate in those types of sports.
Nail on the head.
And then because you've overcome something so intense, it's like, okay, that's my thing. That's where I feel like I'm at home, because this is my territory, this mental boundary, wrestling with yourself all the time of, yes, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it, okay, do it. And, does that kind of make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And also, because it's so physically demanding, when your body has spent so long thriving on detriments, you don't see results like the normal person. I remember being 2 years into my rehab and 2 years into my training and 2 years into my health journey, not seeing any physical change. So it's
2 years.
It's fighting through that. You know what I mean? Because the damage to your bones, the damage to your recovery, it's those things. Yes, I was getting a little bit leaner and getting a little bit more masculine, but take the grey man in the streets and give them 2 years and the changes they'll make versus someone who's like I said, body's been thriving on detriment. You've got to reverse that first before you actually start to see results. And with 10 years of addiction, that's a lot of damage. And my addiction wasn't the guy going on the jawl on the weekend and hitting a bag. You know, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning without it. I was breaking lighter globes to put it into my Coke so that the uptake was a lot faster.
Jesus.
Like, it wasn't just the average Coke addiction because I'm addicted to the jawl. It was, you know, it was a serious problem, and my body suffered, and my body really, really suffered. And I became obsessed with strength and the human condition, which is why I went into the industry that I did, because seeing the change and knowing, again, coming back to powerlifting, having to put so much work in, I wasn't afraid to do the hard work. Powerlifting was easy after that.
Yeah.
You know, it really, really
Pales
was easy.
in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had this conversation with somebody 2 days ago, and he was talking about how his lack of funds in the golf space was a disadvantage to him, and he doesn't as a result get the opportunities to travel to the same sort of tournaments that other players get to travel to, blah, blah, blah. And he got into an argument with his mom because his mom was trying to reframe it in a more positive way, and they didn't see eye to eye. And my advice to him was that whether you think it's a hindrance or an advantage, either way, you're right. So if you think, yes, you aren't going to have access to these tournaments because you don't have the financial means, then yeah, you're right. Nobody's going to say to you, okay, China, no, you're wrong. Like, yeah, you probably won't. But does that also mean that because that is happening, that pisses you off, and that makes you practice for an hour longer than everybody else? Does that mean that because you've practiced harder when you're under pressure on the back nine, and you have more of that dog fuck?
Yeah.
You know, it's just such a beautiful phrase. I love it. You're using that as a strength. Now that's an advantage. You know, it's not a weakness anymore, the fact that you didn't have funds. And it's the same thing I can imagine with going from addiction to something like powerlifting. Like when you're there and you've got to hit a personal best, or you're training and you've got to push through a pain barrier, for example, or mental barriers, pales in comparison. You're using that pain as an advantage to drive you constructively towards something that you're wanting to achieve. So, and it's like that with anything. You can either decide to use it as an excuse for not doing the thing that you're supposed to do, or you can use it as a driving factor, a motivating factor to move towards something that will be to your advantage in the future.
Absolutely, and I think that's when competitors need to be the most afraid, when their competition, what's driving their competition. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%, because it's just all about, life is about reframing stuff, you know? Like, everybody's going to go through stuff.
Yes, everyone's been through stuff.
Everybody's been through stuff. And, okay, you have an opportunity to use it to drive you towards something greater, or you have an opportunity to let it get you down. And I think that is a decision that everybody can make in whatever context their life is. But I wanted to ask you, this cocaine addiction, I assume that was in your 20s, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 25-year-old Lil, you ask her and you say to her, how old are you now?
41.
41, okay. So 25-year-old Lil, a 41-year-old Lil gets to go back to 25-year-old Lil and says, this is what your life is going to look like in 16 years' time. What would 25 Lil say?
It's a good question. And I've been asked similar questions in the past, like, what would your message be to young people? What would you change about your past? I would tell her to do that line again. I wouldn't change a single thing, because I don't think I would ever be where I am today if it wasn't for 25-year-old Lil behaving the way she did.
Do you think she would have believed
Never.
that
Not a
41-year-old Lil would be a reality?
No, not a chance. There's no ways.
Why?
I mean, because at that point, you're very aware of the damage that you're doing.
Are you?
You are aware.
Okay.
You are aware. You're in denial about how much damage you're going to do, because it's just a phase. It's just something I'm doing for now, until you try to stop doing it for now.
Yeah. I had a gambling addict on the podcast, and in prep for that, I was listening to other podcasts about addiction and that. And something hit me with one of the guys. He said addiction is the voice that sits on your shoulder, and it just talks to you all the time. It's just this voice, like back here. And I was like, wow, that is such a good way of describing it. Like, it will never leave.
It never leaves.
Like, that voice is always going to be there, but you have to develop enough skills and abilities and self-belief and evidence to suggest the contrary, that you will be strong enough to ignore the voice.
And that voice sticks around for many, many years.
Does it?
It really does. It really does. Like I said, just a few years ago, I was going through a divorce, and that voice was there. Yeah.
Training different people, so elite athletes to the general population. I wrote an article the other day about my observations of training people that are over the age of 40. It's a loose term, can be 40, can be 45. But I would say that's my niche market. So I've got elite golfers, and then I would say I've got my 40 to 45-year-olds plus. And the way that I approach my elite athletes is very different to the way that I approach my 40 plus guys. Number one, because everybody comes with baggage. Now 40, 45, they come with physical baggage.
Yeah.
There's the surgery, there's the achy hip, there's the lower back, there's the flipping rotator cuff tear, there's the whole thing. And then you've got the other side of it, which is the elite athletes, where their only job is to make sure that their body is in peak condition, and they're hitting balls and they're on the range. And so what would you say are the major differences, if there are any, in terms of how you would approach your general population and training them versus your elite athletes?
Psychological motivation. With an elite athlete, you don't have to motivate them to go to the gym. They miss a squat on the platform, or they miss a wave, or whatever. The reason they didn't go to the gym is why they didn't perform on the day. With Gen Pop clients who's just trying to be a little bit better at life, they need a hell of a lot more motivation. It needs to be a hell of a lot more personal.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is the biggest difference between the two. So, yes, the training is going to be different. The approach is going to be different. The intent is different. It's the communication.
So one of my things is whenever somebody comes into the gym, I'm always like, okay, how are you feeling today? Like, what's the deal? More so with my 40, 45-year-olds plus, because, okay, have you got enough sleep? Like, if they haven't got enough sleep, there's no ways we're getting after it in the gym that day. Like, we're going to be sitting at 70%. We're going to be doing some of the big moves, like the things we should be doing, squatting, your fundamental movement patterns, but at what intensity? Like, we're not heading after a trap bar deadlift like a mad thing that day. And, okay, how much water have you had? How things at home? I suppose that's the motivation and the relationship building that's required for those types of people, so that they can at least feel heard and understood. I think where people go wrong in the past, and sometimes where over 15 years I've gone wrong in the past, is to not have a better understanding of what happens outside the gym with that person. And then trying to take some of that into, okay, well, how does that adjust my programming? But then it also means I'm a lot harder on my elite athletes, because I'm like, Kazi, this is your only job.
Yeah.
Like, you have one job.
Yeah, you have one job.
You've got one job, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I really don't want to hear it. You either want this thing or you don't want this thing. You can't have people want the trophy, they don't want the journey.
Yeah. I like that.
They just want to be there on the podium. They don't want to be the guy that's put in the 10 years of work, And
I think that's exactly it right there. You said hearing. With the general population, it's not so much communicating, it's about listening.
Yes, I love that. Because there is so much going on.
Yeah.
There is so much going on. But I can imagine that must be challenging in some ways in the online space.
It is very challenging, because you've got to really make the efforts. Again, I don't do any like one-on-one classes on a Zoom call. Everything's done a month in advance. All the programming's done. Everything's prepped for their month ahead. It's our responsibility as coaches to reach out to them on a daily basis before they hit the gym. And asking these kinds of questions, and better equipping them for that session and how they can make those changes and really listening to what they have to say. And also knowing when to push and when to pull in the reins.
Yeah.
You know, someone can say, I had a bad day at work yesterday, or it can be light-hearted things, and use that as your motivation. I had a fight with my boss, I had a fight with my wife. Use that as a motivation to push harder this gym. So know when to communicate that. At the same time, know when to say, you know what, let's drop the intensity. Maybe just go and get a 30-minute session. Don't follow the program. Just get a bit of a pump. Feel good. Do the things you like. Because as a coach, you're programming for weakness, right? That's one of your main goals. They hate doing that shit. You know, and I always say to my clients, not my athletes, my clients, don't ever tell me you don't like doing Bulgarian split squats. Don't tell me what you don't like. Because if you don't like it because you're weak of it, you're going to see more of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's a bit of a joke because I need to know these things.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, relationship building.
I love that. I love my rear foot elevated split squats. Like,
and everyone hates them.
Everybody hates them.
We love them as coaches.
Squat. Yeah. No, I love it. Everybody does them. They're like, oh, split squats today. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, obviously.
And you know, it's so funny because I work in powerlifting, right? And the one thing I always say to people, because they'll say, why the fuck am I doing a Bulgarian split squat? Like, I need to be a better squatter. Well, you can't be strong on two legs if you're not strong on one.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I take the same approach with my MMA fighters, to my boxers, to my powerlifters, to my strongmen. It's the same base building foundation. I mean, the reason I got into powerlifting was because I was squatting, I was pressing, and I was deadlifting. But that doesn't mean always on a barbell. It also means a lot of the time it was on one leg.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the foundations. People hate foundations. They just want to do the cool stuff. They want to do the stuff that makes them strong. Like my powerlifters, they're doing something like a dumbbell Cuban shoulder rotation. Why the fuck am I doing this? Well, because your shoulders are unstable, and that's why your bench press sucks. Because that doesn't make them feel strong with a 2-kilo dumbbell can squat 350. You know what I mean? That's more important than your 350-kilo squat or bench. And that's another thing that's really important in my space is communicating why.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yes, it's
they
very
need to know why they're doing the
because
thing.
when they now understand why they're doing those external rotations, because it doesn't make them feel strong on the bench press, then they suddenly apply themselves so much better in the gym. They won't walk out until they've done those rotations or that serratus press because they know more stable shoulders, bigger bench, stronger bench, better podium finish, closer to a national world record. You've got to take every fucking small movement all the way up to that world record for them to be motivated and go, okay, I'm going to do it. Because when you start with these strong athletes, they want to squat, they want to bench, they want to deadlift. Don't give them all that other bullshit in between. Make them understand, communicate those things, explain everything, explain why their shoulders need to be in external rotation when they're moving. When they start piecing all those pieces together, they really do train with better intent.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the general population doesn't care about having more stable shoulders.
No.
Unless you explain to them why, because how it's going to carry over into their lives. Again, it's just constant conversations.
Yeah, you've got to understand what their language is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's again, to be a good coach, you also have to not say that you're a good coach, but you have to let them know that you're a good coach by telling them why they're doing the things that they do.
Yes,
so
they appreciate it.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, wow, actually I'm getting a specific workout, even if it looks really similar to the dude next to me. So like a shoulder press, for example, like most guys who sit behind a desk all day, like they can't get into external rotation very well. And this position there, they're like rounded and they're kyphotic, excessively kyphotic. So to press from here becomes very difficult for them and puts a lot of strain. So for them to do like a neutral grip press versus something like that, then it looks like it's the same thing. To somebody that doesn't know, it's like, oh, well, I'll be just doing shoulder press.
But are you?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like, okay, now you're using this grip because of X, Y, and Z. Joe Soap's doing that because his external rotation is pretty good. He's got really good rotator cuff strength and scap setting and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, oh, okay, cool. I wouldn't have got there on my own. Okay, I see the value.
100%. It's just showing value all the time.
Yeah. Tell me about the day in the life of a social media. You're not a social media influencer, so I'll take that back.
I actually take offense by that sometimes when people say you're an influencer. No, I mean, I like to think of myself as an educator.
I caught myself in it as I was saying it.
But I get
it. So as a strength and conditioning specialist online, tell me about your day-to-day stuff, because people only see the 60 seconds on a story or on a post.
Yeah.
They don't see the rest.
It's so funny because one of my athletes actually sent me a reel the other day, and it said there, this is my online coach. And it's them having a cup of coffee, then lying on the beach, then reading a book in the park, because that's what they think. You know, is such a huge part of our business. There's such a big difference between working in your business and on your business.
Yep.
And both take that equal amounts of time and equal amounts of dedication. And because I've got athletes globally, I'm on the clock 24 hours. You know, if an athlete in Canada is stepping into competition, I've got to be awake. I've got to be watching those games. I've got to be watching those fights. I've got to be on the ball all the time. So there's no time off. But at the same time, there's a lot of time off when you need. Like I said, so I mean, I spend a good 3 hours a day working in my business. So assessing athletes, programming, watching videos, what a fish paste. The rest of the time, generating content for social media is hard work. You'll know that. You make videos. Also, as professionals, we won't be looking, if it comes to generating content, we won't be looking for ideas on things that actually apply to people. We think I need to teach a movement or explain a movement, where the grey man on the street just wants to know something really simple. You've got to start thinking the way they think in order to put out the right type of content that will appeal to them.
Yeah.
So content creation, you'll know, takes a lot of time every day. I've got a team of coaches that work within OTG, so it's also about constantly staying not on top of them, but talking to them, communicating how things are going with our clients, understanding problems that are within the business first. So a lot of time is dedicated to those things, and those things people don't see. You know, that's a lot of time. We're also handling our accounts and dealing with the accountants and dealing with HR and dealing with, it's a constant, it's never ending. The coaching is a very, very small percentage. And when you have the years of experience, you know, people will say to me, how long does it take you to write a powerlifting program, 4-week block for an equipped powerlifter going into world champs? I don't know, 6 minutes? Yeah, but you're charging how many thousands of dollars? Yeah, but it's taken me 17 years in order to do it in 6 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difference. You know, yes, I don't spend a lot of time. I watch hundreds of squat videos a day. That's, you know, I've got an online platform. And within seconds of that squat being initiated, I've already broken down 100 things wrong with it. But that just comes from experience. It comes from looking at the little things. It doesn't mean that my job is inadequate. It doesn't mean I'm not giving you value.
Yeah.
You're paying for my experience and my time and what I've lived and done and who I've worked with. It's not that it takes me 6 minutes to write your program. I can pick up your weaknesses quickly because it's time that I've done this for, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you can link that back to even like communication. So something that I read once was the best communicators, what it takes normal people to say in 4 or 5 paragraphs, the best communicators can say in 1 sentence. Yeah. And it's the same thing. It's like, can you get to the point as quickly as possible with the maximum amount of information that's necessary? And if you can do it in a shorter space of time, well, then that just means you're better at your job.
Yes, I like that.
So again, it comes down to what people are paying for. Are they paying for the World Championship, the fact that they're going to hit a personal best? That's actually what they're paying for. They're not paying for, okay, I need to know that Lil is sitting there for
Drafting,
2 hours a day.
watching
I'm
my
paying
videos.
for her time, you know,
Yes.
she must be putting in those
No,
things.
it's not like that at all.
Yeah, so, and that's actually what people are paying for, the thing. They're not paying for you to sit behind your laptop and do it. But yeah, you're 100% right. It's, if you can get the result faster, then bloody well, kudos to you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And again, with that, going back to the communicating, you know, as coaches we have cues, but you can't use those same cues on every cue for someone's going to be different. I listen to a lot of educators in the field, and they also say things like, hypothetically, with a squat, never use the cue knees out to someone because it's external rotation of the hip and that's what you should be talking to. Well, no, not really, because a lot of people, they will understand better if you say knees out. If I say to Joe Soap, hey, externally rotate your hips, he's like, what the fuck does external rotation mean?
Yeah.
So you've got to cue differently for different people.
Exactly.
It's so important that communication is everything, and understanding how someone listens.
You have to speak their language.
You have to speak their language. You know, if it sounds like a lame cue to the professional strength and conditioning coach that you're coaching, you know, let me speak to Joe Soap like that, because that's how Joe Soap understands.
So that's the art of good teaching.
Yes. Yes.
Not necessarily being a good lifter or a good...
it's good teaching.
Yeah, it's about being a good teacher, a good educator, like you said.
Yeah.
Lil, where can people find you? If they want to get in touch with you, if they want to make use of your expertise in your amazing 6-minute programs,
I say that proudly.
Yes, exactly. Where can
I can't wait until I'm doing it in 2 minutes.
100%. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
The best place to go is firstly to my website. It's otgmethod.com, and that'll then send you to all the social media platforms where we're on the day-to-day. So even if you're just someone out there looking to get more value from the strength industry, the fitness industry, health, nutrition, PEDs, we talk about it all on social media. That's the best place to go. It'll take you through to all my coaches, all our contact details. You obviously see the work we've done and for who we've done it.
Yeah.
Not just ourselves.
Yes, exactly. A little quick question that I like to ask everybody before we go. What have you changed your mind on recently? Or is there anything you've changed your mind on recently? Can be anything. Doesn't have to be in your professional life. It can be in personal life. It can be philosophically. Is there anything you've changed your mind on?
So, yes, a lot. I've just become a mom. And I've changed my mind on the fact that I expected moms to have the same level of discipline as everyone else. Because that's, I think, and I'll admittedly say, that I've been hard on a lot of my clients with, because I'll point out that one of my athletes is a mother of 4. Yeah, but those 4 kids are over 15 years old. I can't compare it to someone who's a newborn. And it's been quite a humbling experience for me at how much work goes into being a mom, and I've got a whole new respect for all the moms that I coach.
How has that affected, or has it affected in any way, your relationship with productivity? So what I mean is, I had a conversation with somebody a long time ago. Lisa was, at that stage, she was a new mom, and we spoke about reframing productivity, and that something that a lot of new moms struggle with is that they should be productive in the same ways that they were productive before they had the child. So then, therefore, if it's not productive in the same way that they thought productivity looked like, it then therefore means you're unproductive. Yeah. But you're not unproductive. You are just being super productive in something completely different.
Else. I think for me personally, it's about prioritizing. That's been the biggest change for me, because same thing, I'll go through a day now and think exactly that. I haven't been productive. Well, have you been productive in the right things that need you to be productive in? A lot of the time I'll be sitting in the office for hours before I was a mom, doing shit that really wasn't that important. I've learned how to prioritize things and be productive, even if it's one thing a day, being productive in that one thing as opposed to getting 100 things done a day with a lot more average intent, because now my time is so limited.
Yeah.
It really is.
So it forces you to be a bit more efficient and deliberate about
more
what
deliberate.
Are the things.
More deliberate, I like that word.
I love that. Thanks, Lil. Thanks very much for being on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everyone. A huge amount of work and effort goes into producing this podcast, whether it's from the research going into the episode, whether it's finding the guests coming to the location, or them being online, to producing the content, edited and putting it in a format that is conducive to your ears and your eyes. And it goes a really, really long way if you can just do me one thing in return for this free content: share it. Share it far and wide, and if you find an episode useful, send it to someone who might feel the same way. That's all. Thanks a million. See you next week.